Hey folks, Scott Weingart here, and this is an EMCrit We. And this is an EMCrit We on dirty epi, or ad hoc bedside epinephrine drips. Now, let's first explain what dirty epi is. I believe the name was coined by frenemy of the show, Ruben Strayer, on his EM Updates blog. It was a practice that had been going on for years in emergency medicine, these ad hoc mixings of epinephrine, but he had coined the name that stuck, dirty epi. And what this is, you take 1 milligram of epinephrine. It could be in the 1 milligram per ml form or the 1 milligram in 10 ml form. It really just doesn't matter that much. You just take any form of a milligram of epi and you put it into 1,000 cc's of normal saline, or really whatever IV fluid you have. But I know it's compatible with normal saline. You stick it in there, and now you have, for all intents and purposes, regardless of which form you used, 1 microgram per ml of epinephrine. Now, in true dirty epi fashion, you would then put it on a standard ED drip set without a pump and start running it in. And you could either just run it in as fast as it could go in a patient who's crashing, hoping that dose will be within a normal dose range. It probably winds up in, depending on which IV cannula size you have, somewhere in the 20 to 30 microgram per minute range, which is it's high. Or you could look at the drips, the drops coming out of that drip set, and make some calculations in your head to how much epi they're actually getting and titrate thereby accordingly. Now, I've in the past and right now have no shame whatsoever in saying this is really just a dumb idea. This is a dumb idea to do dirty epi. And beyond being dumb, it's inelegant. It just makes us look like clods, right? This is cave person medicine. And the reason Ruben has put this up as a viable strategy is, for whatever reason, he does not like the idea of push dose pressors, which is what I would do in pretty much every circumstance that Rube would grab this dirty epi drip. And I've talked about push dose pressors in numerous places. I think it is elegant. I think it is what, for decades, anesthesia has been doing, and therefore there's a long track record of its utility for patients who are sick or undergoing procedures that cause hemodynamic perturbations. It could be prepared ahead of time and therefore not have to be made in a crash situation. If I was ever in a crash situation where I hadn't made the push dose pressors ahead of time and the patient's going down the toilet and I want to stave off cardiac arrest, then I would take that cardiac epinephrine, 1 milligram in 10, that you're grabbing anyway to make this dirty epi, and I would simply push half an ml of that, which would give me a 50 microgram bolus, which is the patient going down the drain temporizing measure that then gives you the time to figure out what your next step is. Ruben's objections that he's expressed in the past, he might have changed his view on push dose pressors. Well, they're going to wear off in 2 or 3 minutes. And what then? But what then is you have now established a regular pressor drip, the standard way, not the dirty way, proper mixing form, and on a pump. And all of a sudden, the patient's temporized and you don't need it anymore. And if it takes a few extra minutes, you give 1 more dose of push dose pressor. For me, it's almost always push dose epinephrine. We really are comparing just how to administer epinephrine to patients who precipitously drop their blood pressure without the time to mix a drip up. And I've debated Ruben on stage. I've debated him in grand rounds. I think it's going to be a matter of perspective. Ruben's a brilliant guy. I think we're just practicing different medicine. And the medicine I want to practice is clean, precise medicine. I want both my patient to receive the best care and the people who are learning from watching how we go about caring for patients to say, wow, the resuscitation crew in this ED, they're excellent. And I just don't think dirty epi does that. And some of the other problems, it's an unrestrained drip. So if the patient does have a large IV, they could get enormous amounts of epinephrine if someone accidentally thought that was fluids and opened up the bag. It's unmeasured. Even in the best circumstances where you're titrating it just as you like, you really don't know how much epinephrine the patient's gotten. And I would never want on my chart to chart what actually took place with this medication unless the patient was really circling the drain. And then it's dilute. And that's really the most tangible problem is that this is a lot of fluid for your epi-drip. Now, if it's short term, like Ruben's used it, then no problem with that. But if it is a long-term use of this, then it is less than ideal if you have already fluid resuscitated the patient. Now, there was a paper published in Emergency Medicine Australasia. And I love this journal because they'll publish stuff like this, which, I mean, it's not the super high quality papers, but it's the stuff that is answering in the best way possible at the current time questions I have. They'll put stuff out there. Let's report on a cohort of patients who have received dirty epi. And there was a paper published on what they dubbed, because this is how they talk about it down under, dirty adrenaline, same thing, dirty epi. It was by Bram, Adams, et al.
These folks had done a really nice job with this paper.
And it was discussed on a blog post by Simon Carley on the St. Emlyn's blog. And I'd seen that post even before I saw the paper. Simon beat me to it. It hadn't, in my monthly journal reading day hadn't popped up yet. And I read his post and I'm like, wow, this is intriguing. Were they really doing dirty epinephrine? Because it just didn't seem like they were. And when I went to the appendix, it seemed like what they were doing instead is what I call mildly messy epi. Now, this wasn't discussed in the St. Emlyn's post, so I was still left intrigued as to whether people were really getting dirty epi in the field. And the context of this is this was a retrieval service, and the retrieval times in Australia, and especially in this group, are particularly long. And the patients they were retrieving were in clinics where they were not emergency departments. They were clinics where there might just be one or two nurses without any real critical care experience. And if they had the random patient that shouldn't have shown up, who is now crashing in a shock state, they might need to mix up a drip when they've never touched epi at all. And in Australia, in many places, epi is a first choice vasopressor, as opposed to here, where most of the time, in most circumstances, it's going to be something like norepinephrine.